All right, today we're jumping right into the Indian pharmaceutical industry. It's this incredible mix of deep science, high stakes money, and global strategy. We're going to peel back the layers and see what really makes this sector tick. So, here's a question for you. Have you ever seen an Indian pharma stock just shoot through the roof and wondered why? And it turns out the trigger was some decision made halfway across the world in the US. How does that even work? Well, the answers are a fascinating blend of global economics, local policy, and honestly, some really precise timing. So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the big global triggers. Then we'll dive into India's own internal engine. After that, we'll check out the playbook that successful companies use. And finally, we'll look at the sector's unique yearly calendar. Okay, let's start with those global triggers. You absolutely cannot understand Indian pharma without looking outward. I mean, it's a massive exporter, so its fortunes are completely tied to what's happening in international markets, especially, and I mean especially, the United States. So, one of the biggest opportunities out there is something called the patent cliff. Just imagine a blockbuster drug, one that's making billions a year. A patent gives one company the exclusive right to sell it. The patent cliff is the exact moment that protection disappears. And poof, a multi-billion-dollar market just opens up. For Indian companies, who are absolute masters at making high-quality generic drugs, this is basically a golden ticket. The whole game is pretty straightforward, but the stakes are incredibly high. First, that big-name drug's patent expires. Then, an Indian company that's been waiting in the wings launches its own affordable generic version. And the result? A potentially massive, and I mean massive surge in revenue. Nailing this timing and being one of the first to market can literally change a company's entire financial year. But to sell these drugs in that super profitable US market, there's a huge hurdle. Companies have to get past the ultimate gatekeeper, the US Food and Drug Administration, or as you'll always hear it, the USFDA. Getting their stamp of approval is non-negotiable, which makes them probably the single most powerful outside force for the entire sector. And the thing about the USFDA is their decisions have these two wildly different outcomes. A thumbs up, an approval for a new drug or a manufacturing plant, can send a company's stock price soaring. But a thumbs down, a warning letter about quality, or worse, a plant shutdown, that can be absolutely devastating, wiping out huge amounts of market value almost overnight. And the last big global trigger is just simple math. See, these companies make a ton of money in US dollars, so the exchange rate between the dollar and the Indian rupee is a huge deal. If the rupee gets weaker, every single dollar they earn turns into more rupees back home. That's a massive boost, a real boon for profits. But if the rupee gets stronger, well, that squeezes their profit margins. It becomes a total bane for them. Okay, so we've looked outward. Now let's turn our attention back home to India's internal engine. Because while all the export news gets the big headlines, the domestic market provides this incredibly powerful and steady foundation for growth that you just can't ignore. The number one driver of this engine is just sheer scale. We're talking about more than 1.4 billion people. You've got a growing middle class, you've got rising rates of long-term diseases. All of this creates a massive, reliable, built-in demand for medicine. And when the government rolls out new health programs, that demand gets even bigger. And of course, the domestic market has its own gatekeepers too. You've got the NPPA, the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority. They literally control the prices of essential medicines, which, as you can imagine, has a direct hit on a company's profit margins. Then there's the DCGI, which is basically India's version of the US FDA. They're the ones overseeing drug quality and approvals for everything sold within the country. The Indian government also plays a really active role in shaping the industry. You see policies like the Production-Linked Incentive Scheme, or PLI. These are designed to make the whole sector stronger from the inside out. By giving companies incentives to make raw materials right there in India, the government helps them rely less on other countries and, well, it boosts their bottom line. So, we've looked at the global stage and the home turf. Now, let's zoom in on the companies themselves. With all these forces swirling around, what does a winning company actually do to not just survive, but to thrive? What's their playbook look like? Success at the company level isn't about just one thing. It's all about balance. Strong quarterly earnings are great. They show the company is healthy right now. But a solid R&D pipeline, that tells you where the future growth is coming from. Smart acquisitions can speed up that growth, and of course, a healthy balance sheet makes sure the company is strong enough to handle any bumps in the road. Let's just focus on R&D for a second, because this is so important. While making generics is the bread and butter for many, the real long-term value is built right here, in the labs. The companies that are pouring money into creating the next generation of complex drugs, things like biosimilars and other specialty treatments, those are the ones building a powerful engine for future growth.
All right, for our final section, we're going to put everything together and set it against a calendar. Why? Because in the pharma world, when something happens is often just as important as what happens. There's a real rhythm to it, a calendar of events that anyone following the sector pays close attention to. The pharma year really does have a distinct rhythm. It usually kicks off with a flurry of activity around major patent expiries. Then you've got earnings seasons, which create a lot of buzz around April and again in October. By mid-year, right after the monsoon, there's a totally predictable spike in demand for medicines that treat things like dengue. And the year usually wraps up with the flu season driving another wave of sales.
And you can see this seasonal pulse right here, clear as day. Yeah, routine care provides a nice, stable demand all year round. But look at those distinct spikes. The monsoon season creates a mini boom for certain types of drugs, and that's followed by another bump during the annual flu season. It's a cycle you can practically set your watch to.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? It's that success in this incredibly complex industry is never, ever about just one thing. It's this delicate, always moving blend of being ready for a global opportunity, knowing how to navigate domestic rules, running a really solid business, and executing all of it with absolutely perfect timing.
And that brings us to a final thought to chew on. As the world keeps changing, with new health crises, shifting economies, new technologies, which of these drivers do you think is going to matter most in the next 10 years? Will it be getting that key approval from a global regulator? Will it be the steady, reliable demand back home? Or will it be a company's own brilliant innovation pipeline? That's really the key question for the future of this vital industry.